Okay, so hi everyone and welcome to our session today. We are going to be talking about knowledge exchange is not enough, co-constructing the evidence base in autism education, focusing on our work with the Autism Community Research Network at Southampton. And just introduce us as the presenters. So I am Professor Sarah Parsons. I am Professor of Autism and Inclusion at Southampton Education School.
And I'm Mark Fry. I'm Director of Education at New Forest Care and have run roles all the way through to Director of Education, Head Teacher, and worked with children with autism for 25 years.
Thanks, Mark. And Mark, with us at the university, is one of the co-founders of ACoRNS, and obviously that's what we're going to talk about today. So just a brief note on the structure for today's talk. I'll just give you a brief background to the context and rationale for the work that we do and where ACoRNS fits into that. I'm going to give you a brief example of the work that we do, as well as talk about the impact that the work is having, and Mark's really going to talk you through that. And a note at the end about what we're going to talk about being a replicable model, so something that some of you might be interested in thinking about doing for yourselves. Okay. So I just wanted to start with a brief note on the context in England, because I know that we'll have an international audience today. And to really just to flag up that the majority of children and young people on the autism spectrum in England attend mainstream schools. So you can see that it's 72% there. And we also know that in England that the children and young people who have the highest levels of support need, and that's signified by having an education, health and care plan, are children on the autism spectrum. So they are the largest group of children with the highest levels of support need in schools in England. And those are the latest figures from the Department for Education. And I just wanted to make a brief note about the policy context for us as well. And this is our Code of Practice for Special Educational Needs and Disability, which came in from 2014. And in a nutshell, the revised Code of Practice really placed more of an emphasis on the stronger participation of children and families in decision making. And it tried to connect up education, social care and health around, supporting children's education, and also emphasises the importance of using best possible evidence when making decisions about education for children and young people. It is also really clear that local authorities must have regard to, so this is a statutory requirement for local authorities as mandated by the Code of Practice, that the views, wishes and feelings of children and parents must be taken into account regarding educational decision making, and for children and parents to participate as fully as possible. And of course what the Code of Practice tries to do, and of course what all of us want, no one would disagree with that, is that all of this is about supporting children to achieve their best potential. The challenges, though, are quite stark in terms of experiences of education for autistic children and young people. So, for example, these are the findings, the summary of the findings from a survey in 2017 from the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Autism and the National Autistic Society. And you can see just from that screen that lots of children and young people, so fewer than half of the sample surveyed, said that they were happy at school. And parents talk often about the experiences that they have and how challenging it can be in finding what they consider to be the right provision for their child at school. And I think really interesting, 6 in 10 young people and 7 in 10 of their parents say that the main thing that would make school better for them is having a teacher who understands autism. So, you know, there's a whole range of challenges there which clearly still need to be met in education. And so what we know from a whole raft of research over many years is that unfortunately it remains the case that outcomes and experiences of autistic children are often considered to be poor. And I argue, along with others, that, you know, part of the challenge, I think, is this very medical model of autism, which tends to focus on positioning autism as a collection of deficits that need to be fixed. And consequently, there's the evidence base that the code of practice kind of encourages people to rely on tends to be based on experimental designs where different kinds of knowledge, so from researchers, tends to be prioritized, often leaving out the voices and experiences of children and young people themselves, and the expertise of teachers. So teachers are very rarely included in educational research, although that's beginning to change a bit now.
And I think for me, Sarah.
Sorry, Mark, yeah, go.
Yeah, I mean, the importance of teacher expertise in schools and the effectiveness of it, of supporting students with autism is, you know, crucial to good outcomes. And, you know, it is overlooked within the research part and more focus on their expertise, their knowledge, the training around them. And what the ACoRNS network does is share that between those practitioners and give an avenue for that to be looked into and, you know, improve for each individual. I think, you know, combining the students, they're very crucial in improving outcomes, not only academically, but with regards to their socio-emotional development. You know, the good practitioners fit around the students and their needs. And for this to happen, the students have to have a voice that's being heard. That's how the teachers learn about those individuals. That's how they, you know, create individuality and make it work for them, rather than possibly a model that fits around the actual need of the autism and a medical need. Actually, it's about looking at that individual and teachers being able to understand the deficits, but actually then have good practice around it to make a difference. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so so we know that research practice gap persists and has persisted for a long time. And there tends to be an assumption that knowledge transfer or exchange is the answer. And I'm just going to say briefly what I mean by that. This is a quote from the ESRC, the Economic and Social Research Council in the UK, which is one of our big social research funders. And you can see here that knowledge transfer is considered to be a very kind of one-way, unidirectional process, which enables research to essentially apply their research knowledge to business. They talk about business here, but of course it basically means organizations outside of academia. So that idea of a very one-way street in terms of research takes place over here and we transfer the knowledge over here. And there's also discussion, of course, of knowledge exchange. And, you know, again, this comes from the ESRC, this quote, but they describe that as encouraging collaboration between researchers and business, public and the civil society through creating a dialogue. But they say here, and as you can see in my emphasis, that knowledge exchange helps research to influence policy and practice. So even though there's an acknowledgement of dialogue there and collaboration, there's still very much a sense that it's research that influences practice rather than the other way around. And so in both of those scenarios, I argue that researchers are considered the experts on what needs to happen and practitioners are expected to fit into those research agendas. And so it's kind of no surprise to me that that research practice gap remains. And I think then we need to do things differently. And that's really what we're going to talk about next. And how do we do that? Well, the British Educational Research Association did a big inquiry a few years ago, but they were really clear that actually if we're going to change this research practice gap, then teachers and researchers need to work in partnership rather than, as they say here, in separate and sometimes competing universes. and that teachers are encouraged to be active agents in research rather than the kind of passive recipients of research wisdom that comes from somewhere else. And I really like this quote from Gary Thomas as well, because he really focuses our minds on what kind of evidence we should be generating in educational research. And he says, actually, it is those questions that are posed locally that matter to practice, that have relevance to what people are doing in schools. That's where we should be focusing our research efforts, not on big kind of generalizable claims from randomized controlled trials or big experimental studies. So that's important as well. And so what I argue then is that what we try to do, and we're going to illustrate that in a minute with our work in ACoRNS, is knowledge co-creation. And that's really about creating new knowledge about research and practice. So what it is that we're looking at through research and practice working together. So how do we do that? And what I would suggest is that this way of working that we're about to explain respects and reflects situated practices and knowledge. So that stuff that Mark just talked about in terms of what goes on in school and how important it is to understand the teachers and of course the individual needs of the children. And that's very much aligned with action and participatory and inclusive approaches to research. And what we try to do in ACoRNS is to position teachers' worldviews and children's experiences at the centre of what we do. So we try to prioritise those different ways of knowing about the world and emphasise that it's that evidence base that really matters to helping to inform practice. So where do we fit in? What are we trying to do with ACoRNS? Well, we are a research practice partnership with the aim of trying to improve the lives of children and young people on the spectrum. And we agreed in the early stages, didn't we, Mark, that our focus would be on the transitions and trajectories of children in education.
Yeah, and I think, that's been the focus from day one. And actually, it's led to lots of different areas being covered through that. And actually, the nice thing about ACoRNS, the age range that it covers, going all the way from nursery up to post-16. And there are many transitions. There's many small transitions in these children's lives from a classroom to another classroom. But there's also larger transitions where they go from a secondary school to post-16 or from a nursery to a reception year. And all of them have an impact. And the impact is mainly around sometimes the transference of information, as we were talking earlier. Some of it's about the other side being set up and have the knowledge about these young people, and that's about the individual teachers or the support staff, and how that information transfers and becomes available to support that young person through that transition. And I think, we've done lots of research around that, and I've been involved with and other organisations. And there's been some fantastic stuff that's come out of it. And, actually the good bit of sharing the practice around that, and it's supporting other schools and other areas and families as well, in, how that things can be done better. And like you said, that localized approach to looking at the research needs and looking at the questions. And you've always been the thing going, the questions have to be relevant to you as a school. And that's so important. And, when we looked at it, and I looked at research as being, quite a big thing, and you look at something that's massive, and actually taking it down to the granular level, looking at the individual practice that we might be doing or another organisation is doing, and then sharing that good practice, but also validating it is so important. And, I'll talk a little bit more with the Ofsted stuff and things like that later.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, so much. Yeah, so that's our focus, and we know those things loom large across children and young people's experiences of education. And so, as Mark's just said, really, what we try to do is to have a true partnership approach to research in schools. We start with research questions that matter to practice, that matter to the schools, and we work very closely with them to develop projects to address those research questions. So we very much work together. And as we've already said, we really try to put the voices of children and young people at the centre of everything that we do. And so that means that we tend to use a range of collaborative and creative research methods to support and access those voices. And we'll come on to this in a minute, but we are already making a difference to practice. So Mark's going to talk about this in a bit in terms of the recognition through Ofsted of the work that we've been doing, but also in other ways. So there's other ways in which we're already impacting on practice, which has been really important for us. And this is just a summary, I suppose, of the way that we approach this. So I suppose it is the way that we try to do this. So it's not just about doing research projects together, though, of course, that's really important. And we always try and get some funding for that, of course. But it's also about supporting the students, of course, that we work with at the university who are doing undergraduate, masters and doctoral research in psychology and/or education. We also include our ACoRNS research and this way of working in our teaching and training with students at the university. And as well as all of the academic stuff that you'd expect us to do, we also spend quite a lot of time really focusing on sharing what we're doing with practice. And of course, that's vital. So if you want to know more about the model and the rationale and all of that, that's summarised in this paper, which I'm also very happy to send you if you have trouble getting hold of it. So please do get in touch. But here's just a summary. So we sort of kicked everything off with some funding from the University of Southampton in 2016. And since then, you know, we've really gone from strength to strength in terms of a whole range of different things that we've been doing. So we've been successful in securing research funding, we've been publishing papers, so we've been doing the academic stuff. We've also, you know, secured some bursaries, some funding to support students to work with us on these important agendas. And we've done lots of dissemination events, including the Festival of Social Science, and hopefully we'll be doing another one again this year. But for example, one of our ACoRNS partners, Springwell School in Southampton, has also managed to secure some funding from the local authority to support some of the work that they were doing that directly followed on from and some of the work that we've done with ACoRNS. One of our students who was working with us won an impact prize for her dissertation, and we've published 3 papers actually from undergraduate dissertations, which just shows the quality of the work that we have been able to do with our partners in ACoRNS. And, you know, for those academics who are based in the UK, you'll understand why this is important, but we have also, ACoRNS is also included in our Research Excellence Framework, the REF. We're included in the environment statement. We are contributing to an impact case study. And of course, we've also contributed papers to that exercise. So actually, you know, it's really important in terms of what we've been able to do. So that's all lovely. But this is the most important bit, really, in terms of the so what. So what difference is that making to practice? So I'm just going to hand over to Mark to say a bit about this in terms of Ofsted, and then also some of the other.
Thanks, Sarah.
So why does this matter to you, Mark?
Why does it matter? And I think that is the crucial question, because if there is no link between the research and real impact on the floor, it doesn't matter. And I think that is the crucial bit. And I think, you know, very early on, being the head teacher at the time, being very busy and having this fear about, oh, this is going to take up lots of time, and what is really the benefit on the ground? Are my staff going to benefit? Are the students going to benefit? I had all those questions, which were obviously, you know, in a busy timetable going, oh, should I be doing this really? Very quickly, you learned that actually, because the relevance on the floor and within the school and for the students directly, it became very important. It became validation for the work that we were doing as a school. It would, I mean, as you see in the 2017 Ofsted report, it was picked up by the Ofsted inspector, the importance of that, and actually, you know, showing that the school had a real focus on learning and actually improving practice, and actually also the validation behind the work that we were already doing of good practice and areas that could be improved. And, you know, then actually putting that into, I suppose, real teaching scenarios with individuals, and the students, working with the students from the university, and really opening up to the whole sort of research, I suppose, agenda as a whole is quite a large thing, because it's very intrusive into the school, and people could be quite fearful because, you know, it's looking, going, oh well, what aren't we really good, and are we not, you know, doing good practice, and actually, you know, there is always that fear, I think. But for me, you know, going through the Ofsted experience, having that feedback, having feedback from parents, and that individuality, which we always prided ourselves on. And as I said earlier, you know, it is very much, for me, has been around the staff and the school fitting around the individuals and making that work before having an impact on anything else, and having research that was sitting behind that, and having research involved in student voice, which has been a big one within our school. And, you know, I spoke earlier saying, how do you change things? How does a teacher become really good? Well, one is through training and everything else, but one is actually listening, and one is actually understanding the individual students. And, you know, we've done lots of areas of research, some recently at the moment, where we're actually working with the students and the university as a group, creating a comic book strip, which is actually will go out and has been published, which then is for other students to access. And it talks about how to find a safe zone, but that is all through their voice. It's all through them communicating. The university obviously then use that as a research piece. They then look at that and say, that is a great model for supporting young people, and another way that you can have impact on behaviour, on their self-management, self-regulation, and in those areas. You know, shaping the future provision of what we do as a school is, you know, everything. I've never wanted to be static. I've never wanted to be static as an organisation. And looking at how we can improve, well, we could do that from ourselves, and that would be great, but probably wouldn't be that effective. We could link up with other schools and learn from them. And we could link up with universities as well, which is what basically ACoRNS has enabled us to do, is put us in a partnership with lots of areas, lots of people, and gives us access to information, to good practice and learning, and even for teacher development, you know, getting students involved as well, I think is a very important bit. You know, we've done several research pieces, and actually it's been student-led. It hasn't been teacher-led or university. It's actually been students being heavily involved in the process of what the outcomes are. And again, you know, that's been really important throughout the process. I think, you know, from a head teacher and director of education of an organisation, it is so important that we get that validation from the research that's completed, and it puts security and strength behind the work that you're doing. And then also, it is nice to be able to go out and share that, and, you know, be part of a network where you can share that good practice and see other good practice as well. And I think, you know, that's why I'm still part of the ACoRNS network, will be hopefully for a long time. And I think, you know, it gives many organisations, say up and down age groups, from the very young to, you know, adults, the opportunity to basically have an improved experience within education, because of the research, because of the sharing of good practice, and, you know, the focus of the spoken about transitions. They are crucial in these young people's lives, and, you know, they are massive, and nobody can really understand, and unless you've been through that process, or you have those deficits which cause those anxieties. And the more we can support individuals, and that's individuals with autism, but also individuals as in parents, as in teachers, have a greater understanding of what will help those children succeed, then the likelihood the outcomes are going to be much better. I don't know if there's anything else, Sarah?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Thanks so much, Mark. That's a brilliant summary of why it matters to you. So overall then, ACoRNS as a model of connecting research and practice is already contributing to the research evidence base through answering research questions that come from practice and the wider community. That's where we start with all of our thinking and discussions. And so we would suggest that in doing the research in this co-constructed way, it's already having positive impacts on practice. And, you know, as we've kind of illustrated, I hope it's not just taking our word for it, but that's also being recognised externally as well. We've got another paper later on today at 12 o'clock, led by our good partners on ACoRNS, Hanna Kovshoff from the university and Catherine Iville from Aviary Nursery. They're going to be talking about one of the projects that we've done under our ACoRNS umbrella. So I'd obviously encourage and strongly recommend that presentation as well. And I just want to finish with a note on this model being replicable. You know, it's something that other people can take up and adjust to their local partners and their local priorities. So it's not a prescription, but it's a model that can be applied in different ways. So we are really delighted that our friends and colleagues at the University of Sussex have led on the development of an ACoRN there, so ACoRN Sussex. And that was launched in October last year. And, you know, that is, it shares a lot of similarities in the core principles with us at Southampton, but given their networks and their partners, they've also got the involvement of health and social care as well, which I think is really exciting. And there's a lot that we learn from each other in how those ACoRNs are working. So, so that's amazing. And, you know, where next? So I think we would, you know, just encourage, I suppose, you to think about whether that is a kind of model that could be relevant for the work that you do, and maybe something to think about. So if you do want to know more or just to chat it through, then of course do get in touch. And so that's just a thank you for listening and for hearing what we have to say today. And of course, our contact details if you do want to get in touch or have a look at our websites or follow us on ResearchGate. And that's a list for anyone who wants the slides. I'm very happy to share them. That's just a list of our ACoRNS publications and of course the references that I mentioned elsewhere in the presentation. So I think it just remains for us to thank you very much for your time today, and for me to thank you, Mark, for
thank you
on this. So thanks very much, and please do get in touch with us if you have any questions. Thank you.